Welcome students. We will continue our analyzing the Decameron, which is written by Giovanni Boccaccio, as we had been doing. Today we will begin with the fourth day. This particular day, Filostrato is nominated the king of the Brigata. Fourth day is an extremely unique day. First reason being that a man reigns the Brigata for the first time. And second reason is that Boccaccio himself tells a story which I have already referred in the first program as the 101st story of the Decameron. Explaining how his story is that it is a natural instinct of a man to enjoy the company of a woman. This is actually his own defense, because he has been criticized by people, he says, for spending too much of time in women's company. He narrates a tale. I will read you the tale, which says that it is a story of Filippo Balducci, who is a widower and also a hermit. He lives with his only son on Mount Asciano. Occasionally he travels to Florence to get supplies for him and his son. And on one occasion, when his son is 18-year-old and he has already grown extremely old and infirm, he takes his son along with him. As soon as the two reach the city of Florence, the young son is fascinated by the sight of women, leading to his old man regretting that he should have never brought his son Filippo to the city of Florence. Now, Filostrato reigns storytelling on the fourth day of tale, and he assigns the topic to the Brigata to tell the tales of lovers whose relationships end in disaster. So, this is the first day a male speaker has been made the king. Secondly, it is also the first day when we have certain number of unfortunate stories narrated by the Brigata. Filostrato's own story, which is most quoted, was narrated however on the day 3 as tale 1. It is about Masato, a very famous tale. I will tell you the tale. Upon learning about a gardening position available in a convent, Masato decides to apply for the position and poses to be a deaf and a mute person in order to get hired. Because he is young and handsome, all the young nuns who are beautiful are curious about him. And considering the consequence of surrendering to their weaknesses of the flesh, the nuns sleep with Masato, believing that he is a deaf and mute person, and as a result he will never be able to tell their stories to the outside world. Masato eventually becomes exhausted by his adventure, and he starts speaking to the abbess of the abbey while making love to her. She, on the other hand, misinterprets it as a miracle, and she decides to conspire with other nuns that they will keep him a secret away from the rest of the world, so that no one can come to know about their secret. In the process, Masato grows old, living in the nunnery, and only when he is old he returns to his own home. He has become rich, he has become old, thus he has lived a life of fantasy that most men dream about and never attain in their lives. We are going to talk about Fiammetta's tales. On the fifth day, Fiammetta is selected the queen of the day. She sets an interesting theme, which is the tale of lovers who pass through various disasters and then attain their success in love and have good fortune in love. The tale that she narrates on day 4 as the first tale of the day is considered the most tragic tale that she tells. And this tale is also well read. It is the story of Gismonda. Transardi, the prince of Salerno and who is the father of Gismondo, slays Gismondo's lover. Now, Gismondo is sent the lover's heart in a golden goblet as a gift from the father. She is so upset that she pours a poison on top of the heart. She drinks that concoction and she falls down dead in the process. Also, another interesting tale that Fiammetta relates is on day 10th. It is the tale number 6. It's about King Charles the Old, who falls in love with a young maiden, and afterwards he becomes aware of the folly of the situation and then finally marries the young maiden and her sister honorably in marriage to someone else. The summary of Elissa's 10 tales, but sixth day of storytelling sees Elissa as the queen of the Brigata, and she chooses a theme where character avoids attack or embarrassment through a clever remark. Interestingly, most of the stories in this particular day's storytelling are all original works of Giovanni Boccaccio. Stories are impressive because immense use of wit and retorts have come up, and it reads very fast paced kind of a prose style, faster than any other days. Now, the most interesting tale that Elissa herself narrates is not on the day that she is herself is a queen. It deals with day 6 and tale 9 of day 6, and it deals with a character from real life. It talks about Guido Cavalcanti politely delivering an insult on a Florentine gentleman and who is taken by surprise by the whole thing. And Guido Cavalcanti, we know, was a real character in Renaissance Italy of Boccaccio's time. Next, we are going to analyze the summary of Dino's storytelling. During the 7th day, Dino is made the king of the Brigata. Interestingly, that although in every day he appears on the 10th tale and he is never abiding by any particular topic, when he is a king, he allows the Brigata to speak on a particular topic. The topic being that tales in which wives play tricks on their husbands and fool them. These kinds of stories were typical of the medieval era, where we know that the stereotype stories of husbands being cuckolded by their wives are constantly running through medieval literature. We see reflection of these kinds of tales even in Canterbury Tales by Chaucer. Dioneo is the most witty of all the narrators in Decameron. He tells a very interesting tale on day 3rd, which is tale 10th, and it is a story of Alibec. Alibec becomes a recluse, and she is seduced by a monk, Rustico by name, and Rustico later on is exhausted by the adventure with Alibec, and he entrusts her to be taken away by Nirbal. But Alibec is seduced by Rusticio before that by saying the act of copulation is nothing but putting devil back in hell. Now, this is an extremely bawdy tale, possibly the most bawdy tale that Decameron narrates, and to that extent it has become also the most frequently representative tale from the Decameron stories. Now, we will analyze Lauretta's day's storytelling. Lauretta reigns the queen on the 8th day of storytelling. During this day, the members of the group have to tell stories which involve tricks women play on men or men play on women. So, bringing a kind of an uniformity in their storytelling. Now, Lauretta also tells a very interesting tale, which is outstanding story of 3 young men, and it is a tale she narrates on day 4 of storytelling as tale number 3. The story is about 3 young men who run away with 3 sisters, and they run away to make a new life in the island of Crete. In the island of Crete, on the other hand, the eldest sister manages to murder her lover because she feels jealous. And the second sister saves the life of the first sister by giving herself as a present to Duke of Crete. Since she has done such a transgression, her lover is angry. So the second sister is killed by her lover, who not only kills the second sister, but he also elopes with the first sister in the process. Now what we are left with in Crete is the third sister and a lover. Now these 2 characters are captured by the soldiers of Crete and charged with murder, and after they are arrested. They pay a huge amount as bribe to the soldiers and the guards, and they manage to escape out of Crete, go to live in an island of Rhodes, where they lead the rest of the life as absolute poverty-stricken destitutes. Now we will move to the 9th day of storytelling. On the 9th day of storytelling, Emilia is the queen of Brigata, and for the second time in the entire Brigata tale of 10 days, we find there is no prescribed theme given to the narrators. So they are again allowed to speak on any topic, just as it was under Pampinia's rule on the first day. Emilia's own stories are rather interesting, but the best known story from her comes to us on day 4, which is tale 5, and she talks about Simona and her lover Pasquino. The 2 of them they fall down dead in the garden because they have pulled out a herb and eaten it. That herb had grown from a soil under which a poisonous toad was hiding, alluding to the Renaissance belief that the toad was the most poisonous creature on earth. Although toad was also a very precious creature according to the Renaissance belief, because it is supposed to have carried one precious gem in its head called the toad stone, which was used for curing various diseases. But the story is that of a tragic end. Finally, we will move to the 10th day storytelling. On the 10th day, Panfilo is the king of the Brigata. He asks the company to tell the stories of generosity, tell stories of benevolence, tell stories of munificence. These tales escalate one after the other in the degree of generosity till the last story of the day, which predictably is spoken by Dioneo. And here the generosity reaches a climax in the story of patient Griselda, who sacrifices everything that she has for the sake of making her husband happy. But if we look at the most interesting story that Panfilo had spoken throughout the 10 days, we have to turn our attention to the tale of 9 on day 10, where he talks about a real character, Emperor Saladin. The story is about the Sultan Saladin, who is dressed as a merchant and honorably entreated by Messer Tolero that the crusade is ensuing, and Messer Tolero appoints a date on which, if he does not return to his wife has the opportunity to get married once again. And then he is taken a prisoner by the Sultan. He trains hawks under the Sultan and then comes under Sultan Saladin's notice. When Saladin recognizes him, he requests him to accept various honors. And Tolero, in the meantime, has applied magic arts to cure himself, to cure other people, and he now gets transported for a single night to his hometown Pavia, where his wife's second marriage is about to be solemnized, and she fortunately recognizes him and they are once again united. This story is the 9th story of the 10th day, and it ends the storytelling of Decameron for all 10 days. We will take a look at Giovanni Boccaccio's biography. The exact detail of his birth is uncertain, although we know that he was born in a remote village nearby Florence, where his family was from. Giovanni Villani, a contemporary of Boccaccio and also a chronicler, states that Boccaccio was born in Paris. He was the son of a Florentine merchant and an unknown woman. Almost certainly Giovanni Boccaccio was born as an illegitimate child. It was as an adult in Naples that Boccaccio began what he considered his true vocation, that is, writing poetry. The works produced in this period include Filostrato and Cressida. The sources for Chaucer's Troilus and Cressida, and also for Knight's Tale. Filocolo, a prose version of an existing French romance, was also produced in this period of time. He also wrote La Caccia di Diana, a poem in terza rima. The period featured considerable formal innovation on part of Giovanni, including possibly the introduction of the Sicilian octave to Florentine writing. Boccaccio returned to live in Florence early in the year 1341, avoiding possibly the plague which swept that city in the year 1340. He also therefore missed the visit of Petrarch to Naples in the year 1341. His reason for leaving Naples was a tension which had grown between the King of Naples and the Florentines. Although dissatisfied with his return to Florence, Boccaccio continued to work, producing Ameto, a mix of prose and poems, in the year 1341. Then he completed 50 cantos of allegorical poem Amorosa Vision in 1342 and Fiammetta in 1343. The pastoral piece also dates from this time. In Florence, when Walter of Brienne was overthrown, it brought about the government of workers, a government which diminished the influence of nobility and the wealthy merchants class, which assisted Florence in its patronage towards art and architecture. The city was further hurt because in 1348 Black Death swept through it. From 1347, Boccaccio spent much time living in Ravenna. He was looking out for new patronage, and despite what he claims, he possibly was not present when Florence was torn by plague. His stepmother fell a victim of the plague, and his father died little later in the year 1349. It was then, as the head of the family, he had to return to Florence. Boccaccio began working on Decameron almost the same time of his return to Florence in the year 1349. It is probable that the structure of many of the tales that he wrote in the Decameron dates from an earlier part of his career, but the choice of 100 tales and the frame story of the Brigata of 3 men and 7 women must have been selected at this point in time. The work was completed more or less by 1352. Significantly, it is Boccaccio's last effort in literature and one of his last work also written in Italian language. The only other substantial work that he wrote and revised was Boccaccio. The Decameron in 1370 to 71 saw a revised version. The manuscript of this time has survived to our present day. From 1350, we find Giovanni Boccaccio less becoming a scholar. He became more involved with Florentine government. As an ambassador for the city of Florence, he visited Rome in 1350. He once more revisited the city and also was sent as an ambassador to the cities of Milan, Avignon and Brandenburg. In October 1350, he was delegated to greet Francesco Petrarch as the latter entered Florence, and also was honored to have the great man as a guest at his home during the entire period of Petrarch's stay. The meeting between Petrarch and Boccaccio was extremely fruitful, and they remained friends forever. Boccaccio calling Petrarch his teacher, and Petrarch at this time encouraged Boccaccio to study classical Greece and Latin literature. The two met again in Padua. Boccaccio was on an official mission, and he had invited at that point in time Petrarch to take a chair in the University of Florence. The discussion between the two at this point in time was instrumental in Boccaccio writing the next book, which is called the Genealogia Decorum Gentilum. This remains a key reference for all works on classical mythology for over 400 years after Giovanni wrote it. It also served as an extended defense for the study of ancient literature and thought. Despite the pagan belief that the Boccaccio believed that so much can be learned from the antiquity. Thus, he challenged the argument of the clerical intellectuals of the Catholic Church who wanted to limit access of classical sources to prevent moral harm to the Christian readers. Certain sources also see at this point in time a conversion in Boccaccio because of his meeting with Petrarch. Boccaccio apparently turned from being an open humanist of Decameron to a more ascetic writer, closer to the 14th century ethos. For example, he followed Petrarch and also Dante in the unsuccessful championing of an archaic and deeply allusive form of Latin poetry. Following his meeting with Pope Innocent VI in 1359 and again another meeting with Petrarch, it is possible that Boccaccio took some kind of a religious mantle. There is a persistent but unsupported tale that he repudiated his earlier work, including Decameron, as profane. In 1360, he began to work on a book offering biographies of 100 people and 6 famous women, and he completed this work in the year 1374. A number of Boccaccio's close friends from Florence and other acquaintances were executed in the year 1361 after a military coup overtook the city. Although not directly linked to the conspiracy, it was in this year that Boccaccio left Florence to finally take up residence in Certaldo. He became less involved in the governmental affairs. He did not undertake any further mission of diplomacy and traveled to Naples and then on Padua and Venice, where he met up with his friend Petrarch in grand style at the Palazzo Molina, Petrarch's residence and as well as his library. He later returned to Certaldo and met Petrarch only once more in his life, again in 1368. When he heard about Petrarch's death in 1374, Boccaccio composed a commemorative poem, including in his collection of lyrical poems, The Rhyme. He returned to work for Florentine soon afterwards, undertaking a mission to meet Pope Urban V. Boccaccio was again sent to Urban, offering congratulations. He also undertook many diplomatic missions for his city-state to Venice and Naples. Of his later work, the moralistic biographers describe as the Illustratum, the Claris were most significant. His other works include a dictionary of geographical allusion in classical literature. He gave a series of lectures on Dante Alighieri in 1373, and these resulted in his final major work, which was called the Commedia de Dante. Boccaccio and Petrarch were also two of the most educated people in early Renaissance in the field of archaeology. Boccaccio changed his writing style in 1350s, and it was mostly due to poor health and premature weakening of his physical strength, and also because of his disappointment in love, that he started writing suddenly in a bitter style. His final years were troubled by illness, some relating to obesity and what is also related as dropsy, severe edema that would be described later as congestive heart failure. He died at the age of 62 on 21st of December in 1375, and he is buried in Certaldo.